All right, how's everyone doing? I am Rich CELENZA. Thanks for tuning into the Rich CELENZA Show. So, what I want to call this podcast is I think there are no rules when it comes to fashion. Now, I was going to do this actually as a YouTube video as well eventually, but I just said, let me just, sometimes when you do a podcast, it comes out of me a little more fluently because I'm not looking at myself at the camera. And, when it comes to fashion, let's just say. And if you know anything about me, I like trying to help dress men, I guess you could say, affordably. I want them to look the best they can, but be able to dress that way and not lose a ton of money. Now, if you have a ton of money to do whatever you want to do, God bless, go buy and do whatever. But I just think when it comes to fashion and accessories, a lot of people spend way too much money. And then they find themselves under a lot of stress because they have a lot of clothes or accessories that are really not worth that much, and they can't afford their other bills, or they can't afford to do other things they want to do, but they have all this inventory stuck in their closet and they don't even wear a lot of it. So if you probably listen to any of my YouTube or podcast, you've heard this, but in this case what I want to get into is the rules. And I want to tell you right now, you probably were told, you can only wear white during this time of the year. You can only wear this type of outfit this time of the year. You can only wear these type of colors. Or you can only do this or that, or you're out of style, or whatever the case may be. I'm here to tell you there are no rules. I did a very similar video with fitness. There are no rules in fitness. The rules are the ones you create for yourself. You want to look a certain way, you could do it. And you probably, if you've ever been to New York, LA, Chicago, major cities, San Francisco, you're shocked. You're like, holy shit, how do you pull that off here? Where maybe you're from a place where, for the most part, a lot of people dress not exactly the same, but the same to a certain degree. Everybody looks a certain way. They wear the same type of coats, pants, shirts. Not everybody. Of course, there's a lot of people out there that are eccentric, but you get my point. The one thing, though, I do want to talk about, it's not always about what's in or out of style. I always say set the trends, don't follow them. It's not about, it's about creating what works specifically for you. That goes for fitness, that goes for wardrobe, that goes for lifestyle, man. Stop getting caught up with what everybody is telling you to do or what they're doing or telling you how to dress. Now, there are some rules, I think, in my opinion, that should be kind of looked at because, like, for instance, I don't like, saggy pants where dudes are walking around. I'm not down with it. Again, you can dress any way you want. I don't think it's appropriate, I would say, more than anything. And believe me, I'm a guy who doesn't like to follow rules. And, I just think that's kind of bullshitty. I also think a lot of guys maybe sometimes, again, just, if you're barefoot or sandals and you're traveling in the airport or you're around a lot of people and your feet are bare even, you could do it. And I live in Florida, so I see it everywhere. Again, you could do what you want, but I think if you're going to a nice restaurant or certain things, there are rules. I'm not going to say there's no rules, but I just think they should be more considered respectful type rules. Like even if I go to someone's house, say, for instance, and I know they're going to make me take off their shoes, I'm going to wear a shoe with a sock. I don't think I should be walking around their house barefoot. Now, again, that's just my opinion. So I don't want to say there's no rules. Again, they're the rules I created. But if you are somebody who's really, thinking about changing their identity, I talk a lot about this in my program, Mastering Self-Confidence for Men, and my book, Wingman. Most dudes, they get bored in life. And I think they want to change their style, but they're afraid of what people are going to think about them. They're afraid of, what they're going to say to them. They're also afraid, like, maybe to just look different. People are going to say things on social media, say, for instance, too. And it's not easy to change your identity. So I've actually been quite the opposite with that. You never knew what I was going to wear because I really could care less. But I grew up in the garment fashion industry where, depending on kind of what family members I was around, I dressed differently, and they dressed me differently, which was interesting. My father's family is there are a lot of designers, and my grandfather owned the largest garment shop in Chicago at one time, and my father and his brothers, some are designers, they own factories. It was expected to not only dress and look a certain way, your clothes had to fit you correctly. And on my other side of the family with my mother, it was more, they were good with clothes too, Italians, but more rough, kind of street looking wear, I guess you could say. Leathers, open, in the 70s especially, open shirts, which I still kind of like, the collar flaring out, jewelry, gold, more gaudy. I like both sides. The other one's more conservative, I guess you could say. And I learned, I should say, I really realized this in high school. I lived in Chicago, but I'd come to Florida for the summers. And eventually kids in Chicago started calling me a Florida kid, and obviously people in Florida would call me a Chicago kid. And I would dress differently. But what was interesting is I started to dress like a Florida kid in Chicago, and I dressed more like a Chicago kid in Florida because I liked the contrast. It got me a lot of attention, especially with girls, and I looked different. I liked to stand out. I didn't want to fall in to, look like everyone else. And then when I was playing different sports too, like even if I was going with my buddies, if we were boxing or wrestling or lifting weights and stuff, I kind of dressed more roughhouser, like bodybuilder wear, powerlifting wear, those clothes. And then all of a sudden I'd be playing tennis and I'd like preppy wear. And so I would be wearing, different types of clothes. If you watch any of my videos, you could tell from 1 minute to the next, I don't do it on purpose. It's just the way I dress. I get bored. There's, again, no rules for me. And even a lot of people will be like, hey, you can't wear a turtleneck if it's 60 degrees or 55. Or I'll be like, I'll wear whatever the hell I want to wear. A leather coat, if I feel like wearing one in Florida, because it does get chilly or wherever, I'll wear one. I can care less. I don't go over the top where on the other side of it where I look overdressed sometimes. I think a lot of people, and you can do that. Like if I'm going out to lunch, I'm not going to wear a lot of times in Florida a three-piece suit. Unless I feel like it, I might. But for the most part, I'm going to dress kind of to the atmosphere that I'm in, and I also want to be comfortable. And I'm also definitely not going to underdress. I do believe being overdressed is always better than being underdressed. But sometimes I will throw shit out there where I don't give a shit. I just went to my grandmother's wake, for instance, and I knew everybody would be wearing suits and everything, and I'm the guy who always wears different style suits in different colors and things, but I knew I'd be wearing a black suit for the funeral and all that, and I didn't want to go back to back. And I knew my grandmother, she was kind of a rough, Italian woman, and she liked this leather coat I used to wear, and I had it polished up, and I wore it there, because I said, I knew if she was with me, she'd be like, yes, I like this, because I even took a picture with her, me and her, in Chicago. The last picture I did of us two was in that coat. So I want to wear that coat. Was I underdressed a little bit? I wore a beautiful white dress shirt, brand new, and dress pants. My mother was a little upset that I wasn't wearing a suit, but a lot of other people, they know that I'm kind of a risk taker to a certain degree. Whatever, like big deal, like I'm a risk taker. But when it comes to you, you may, just saying, let me dress the way I want to dress. Let me dress the way I want to feel. Because I think a lot of people don't realize the clothes they're wearing makes them feel a certain way. It can make you feel inspired. It can make you feel, tired. It can make you feel, I don't know if you ever went to school, because I went to a Catholic school. And I remember going to a public school to visit and stuff, my buddies, and we were always dressed up. But when we went to school dressed up, and sometimes we even had to wear ties, wear dress shirts and dress coats and things, when we went to school, we had a different behavior. There was no question being in a Catholic high school. And then I should say when I was in Florida, say going to summer school, it was the complete opposite. It was kind of like guys, again, in sandals, shorts, T-shirts, even walking around with tank tops and all this shit. And I even did it. I'm like, oh, wow. I had a different feel about myself. Doesn't mean it was better or worse, but it's very interesting how the way I dressed really impacted the way I acted as well. And, you hear that all the time, like, if you're going to make it, you got to wear a suit and you got to do this and you got to feel this way. I get sometimes, if you're in a corporate world, you got to dress a certain way. But most dudes I know that are in the corporate world, especially a lot of my close friends and family members that are lawyers, very wealthy in the city, that do many different things, own many different businesses. At this point in time, in 2020, they are way more about the casual. They're way more about comfort. They're about, if they're going to court, or if you're doing a business meeting, obviously you don't want to be showing up in sportswear. I get that. But, I think too, and this had happened to me actually during the pandemic and Corona, is I was always really, for the most part, when I traveled a lot, dressed up. And the reason I dressed that way is because not only, it's not even about attention, it's about being treated a certain way. If I'm getting on a plane and I'm dressed in a three-piece suit, I'm going to get treated differently, I can assure you, than the person who's sitting there with, ripped jeans, shorts, or shorts and a tank top. When I go to check in a hotel, and regardless if I'm a Diamond member or not, they're going to look at me differently. When I go to restaurants and I'm dressed a certain way, I get treated differently. I'm going to tell you right now. It's just reality of life. But back to Florida during, the coronavirus and pandemic, because I was doing videos when I was traveling and I was usually dressed up. Then people started to see me dressed differently. And I'm like, well, the reality is I wanted to dress exactly the way that I was dressed at that time and how I live. And for the most part, if you were friends with me on Facebook, and I didn't do a lot of Instagram, I was both ways. I was very dressed a lot of times when I traveled. One was for warmth, and I like wearing layers, and I like looking a certain way, especially if I'm in an urban or a city. I like that look. I'm not going to always be walking around with sportswear in a city like Chicago, Toronto, New York, Montreal, or wherever, Vancouver. It could be, San Francisco. But when I was in Florida, I was very casual because that's how I feel. And I like the casualness. I don't want layers. You're going to see me in shorts or workout shorts, probably like a golf or a tennis type shirt. I don't play tennis, or like a V-neck, because that's what I feel like wearing. And again, sometimes I will dress differently when I travel. It was funny because sometimes I'd land and my girlfriend would see me in all sportswear. And she'd be like, oh my goodness, you traveled like this today? I'm like, yeah, this is what I felt like wearing. I knew it'd be a long flight. Say I had to catch 2 or sometimes 3 flights. I didn't want to be in a 3-piece suit. And I was coming home. So I knew I didn't have to deal with anybody except the airlines. I wasn't going to be checking in a hotel. I wasn't going to be going to any restaurants. So again, I kind of fit my wardrobe, or the way I want to dress, to how I want to feel throughout the day. Especially long flights, I wanted to make sure if I fell asleep, I was comfortable. And again, these are rules that I created for myself, kind of, and I'm telling you not to have any rules, but make rules that work for you is really what I'm going to wrap this up with. And I just gave you a perfect example. Those rules worked for me. You may want to come up with different types of things that work for you, but don't always get caught up with what everyone else is saying. I don't care if it's in GQ. I don't care if you're seeing it on YouTube. That doesn't mean not take the advice that people are giving you regarding fashion. And I definitely don't want you to look way out of whack or way out of style, unless you want to. I'd like you to be a little fashionable. I like taking vintage clothes and new clothes and kind of meshing them together. But I definitely am having a problem with fashion right now as far as high fashion. I don't, for the most part, like a lot of things I'm seeing. For men, it's way out there for me, and I'm just not interested in it. So I've slowly but surely just started creating more and more of my own thing. I'm actually going to, I think, start going back to my roots and dressing like I'm in the 70s. I know that sounds crazy, but I like it. I already just did that with a profile pic. That's what I changed it back to my grandmother's. But I think on LinkedIn, I like those wide out collars, even though they're actually not, I think traditionally they're not supposed, you're not supposed to do that. I don't think your collar was supposed to always be underneath your coat or your jacket, sport coat, whatever. It wasn't supposed to flare out, if you know what I'm talking about. But I like big lapels. I'm not a small guy. These small lapels, I think I look like a little bitch. I look like I'm wearing a kid's coat. But I also like breaking the rules where I think I'm going to be getting maybe fake furs. I feel bad for animals, but I wouldn't mind like getting something very kind of like what Joe Namath wore, maybe a white leather long coat. I'd have to see. And just going way back to the 70s, I think I can pull that off. I think I have the body and the mindset to do that. A lot of people can't pull off certain period pieces. But I already tested it, and I really liked it. I'm even going to wear a vest, I think, for one of my photos with no shirt underneath it. Kind of like, was it Miles Davis? Who was it? A singer, a black singer I liked. Oh, James Brown used to do it too. I saw James Brown in concert. He'd wear a vest, and he would obviously, dance. He was incredible. But just the vest, no shirt underneath it. I thought he's just the dopest, man. I just liked that look. So I think I'm going to be going 70s hard. And again, who's going to tell me any different what's in or out? Again, I'd rather, even though that trend's already gone, come and gone, but that's probably the time period that I like the most with fashion is 70s and 80s. So I'm going to probably mix that with, I also love sportswear now. I love a lot of different things that are coming out, including my friend who owns his own clothing line, is one of my sponsors, Strong Arm Sports. I like these microfiber shirts, getting away from the cotton. I like a lot of the pants that you can wear to work out, and shorts, the materials. I like a lot of caps now. Before I didn't like hats. So these are all things I'm incorporating, and I'm always evolving and testing. And that's probably what you should do too if you're interested in, maybe switching up your wardrobe. So hopefully you got something out of this. What else do I got? If you get a chance, check out my YouTube channel, Rich CELENZA. If you need any help or whatever regarding relationships, identity, wardrobe, hygiene, you can obviously check out either my podcast, YouTube, but also my program, masteringselfconfidence.com. Also on LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. All right, take care, and I wish you nothing but the best.